Decanting. Decanting is a thing that is often done in the wine world, and sometimes done in the beer world. And I'm really interested because people have strong opinions about it when it comes to lambics, or they can. So, like, what is decanting, right? Decanting is where you take a bottle. I mean, the word just means to pour something out, right? In this context, decanting just means to take a bottle of beer and to pour it into something. And in this context, it also means to sort of let it rest there for a while. So I've got 4 bottles of this, which is Gur's Bone from 2018-2019 season. I have taken 4 bottles of them. 4 hours ago, I decanted one into a decanter. 2 hours ago, I decanted another one into another decanter. An hour ago, I decanted yet another one into another decanter. And then I have one unopened bottle here, which I'm going to open up in a minute. So there's like 3 different things that decanting can do. The first one is maybe obvious if you've brewed beer before, but if you're pouring beer out into like open air, it's going to get oxidized, right? So oxygen comes along and it interacts with these flavor molecules in the beer, and it can change them. It can, some people might say it would improve some, and others might say it would improve, it would make some worse, but it changes them, right? So oxidation is really just a process of change. Usually it's associated with a process of decline, but in this, oxidation is usually a process that takes place over like hours to days to months to years. And so when you just pour something into a decanter like this, if it's just been sitting there for half an hour or an hour, you're probably not going to notice much of a change from oxidation. Even a few hours, you probably won't notice that much of a change from oxidation, but maybe a little bit, and we'll see. The second thing is evaporation. So of course, like it's got alcohol in it, and this is also probably accelerated by the fact that it's carbonated. It's got CO2. It's pushing stuff out into the air as it sits there. So as it sits there, the alcohol is going to evaporate a little bit, but not only the alcohol. Some of those volatile flavor molecules, which are the things that you're smelling when you swirl it in the glass. It's the same thing. When you swirl it in the glass, you're evaporating flavor molecules out of the beer into your nose, right? So as it sits there, those flavor molecules are sort of dispersing off into the atmosphere. And this is often desirable in wine because you have these reductive wine floors, which you have floors which, as they sit in a decanter, they're very volatile and they will disappear over the course of like half an hour to an hour or whatever. Or like some of them will, and it will improve, right? They say sometimes that like old wine is often stinky when you open it, and then you just need to decant it, and then the stink goes away and you get to the real wine. And I've seen like how that might be true in some certain beers, like a brewery, Decant often comes to mind because they have like a lot of stinky notes. Some people love them. I mean, I happen to love them, but they're the kind of stinky notes that if you let it sit for a while, the stink will change and it will become a little bit more friendly. And then the third thing is like the mental part of this, right? You're treating it with a little bit more respect. You're not just taking a bottle and throwing it in your glass and then shoving it back. You're actually like, you're pulling out your fancy decanter, you're taking the bottle, you're pouring it into the decanter. There's a little bit of ritual around it, right? It's a little bit more respectful. You end up having higher expectations, and often those expectations end up being satisfied. A lot of beer drinking is mental, and this is no exception. There's also one other practical part of this when it comes to beer, which is pouring the beer off the sediment, and that is actually kind of a big deal for lambic. Because a lot of lambics tend to have a reasonable amount of sediment. This is why you see them being poured from baskets, right? So they will be stored horizontal. You take it from the horizontal state into the basket, and then you pour it from horizontal into a glass. And that way you pour it off the sediment without disturbing the sediment, right? But if you have to keep going back and forth, pouring from glass to glass, then you're going to keep disturbing that sediment every time you rock the bottle back and forth. So, like, there's this quote from Drie Fontein, of having one continuous pour from the bottle so that you don't disturb the sediment. And the way that you do that is you pour the beer into a decanter. But really, that's as simple as it is. There's not really anything else that's going on here. At least not from the research that I've found. And it doesn't seem that there's been a whole lot of research into decanting when it comes specifically to beer. Obviously, it's a bit different from wine. Wine isn't carbonated, or most wine isn't carbonated. And the research that has been done on still beverages. So I'm not quite sure what the changes might be and how the carbonation will affect it. I assume the older beers will be less carbonated. Sorry, like the beers that have been decanted for a little bit longer will be less carbonated, but we'll see. All right, so how am I going to do this? Let's see. I think to start with, I will pour them all into glasses, and then I will try and switch them around a little bit with labels on the glasses, and I will taste them blind, and we'll see what I can figure out. Yeah, Bone is like, I get a lot of, like a little bit of basement, a lot of minerality, and a lot of apple. Okay, interesting. I've gone and I've smelled around and I've tasted a lot of them a lot. And I think I can smell some very, very slight differences. They are by no means large differences. I probably could have picked a better beer to do this with, but Bone is not that expensive, so it's reasonably easy to go out and buy 4 bottles of it, unlike 3 Fontaine or something like that. But so like what I'm thinking is that there's a spectrum of fruitiness and woodiness, and some of them are sort of juicier and other ones are sort of woodier. And what my sort of hypothesis is here is that over time that juicy apple note is sort of like that's a volatile note, and that's flying off early, and it's leaving sort of a more woody, more vanilla sort of note behind from the barrels, right? So I'm going to try and line them up, and I'll reveal them, and I'll see how close I was. Now, this one is more mellow, right? I think that one is the woodiest. It doesn't perfectly describe what I'm getting on the nose here. It's sort of mellower, less fruity. The minerality also dies off a little bit. And like a lot of, it's sort of mellower. So I reckon that's probably 4 hours, and this is 2 hours. So we'll say 4, 2, 1, and fresh. It's a little surprising to me that it was not easier to taste the difference between fresh and, well, I don't know if that's what it is, between fresh and 4 hours sitting open in the air. That's quite surprising to me. I mean, there were some differences, but I could be totally wrong now. I'm looking for the differences, right? So, but that said, they are a little bit different. There is certainly more fruit in that one, and there's certainly less fruit and more funk and more wood in that one. Whichever way this goes, it's going to be interesting to find out. Let's see. All right, A, so that was the 4 hour one. All right, B, so that was the 2 hour one. We're going good so far. D. So D was the fresh one. So I got those mixed up, and C has to be that one. So that's the 1 hour. Now that's interesting, because like I felt like there was a quite a big jump of juiciness from this glass to this glass. Yeah, I stand by that. I perceive those as being reasonably different. Like the same beer, but there's variance there, which is pretty big to be the same beer. Super interesting. I also feel like I never knew this about Bone before, but going back from like the oldest one to the newest one, the newest ones have a little bit of a diacetyl sort of note to them, but it isn't in the old ones. Like, and that's not uncommon for sour beers, right? Because you've got like lambic sour beers, because you have pediococcus in sours, and pediococcus produces diacetyl. So it isn't uncommon at all to get a little bit of diacetyl in sour beers, and most people don't even notice it. But I have never noticed it in Gersbone before either. But it's interesting to me that if you decant it for 4 hours, I can't perceive any diacetyl on these, on the 2 and 4 hour one. But on the one, oh, it's there. It's there. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, if I had have just focused on the diacetyl, I probably could have ordered those a little bit better, because that really sticks out, actually. You know, like, in summary, I'd say it's probably not worth it. Just drink it from the bottle, unless you get something straight out of the bottle that you're like, I'm not ready for this right now. This is too much for me right now. Maybe then you decant the entire bottle into a decanter. Maybe then you wait an hour and see if it gets better. But I don't think prescribing decanting lengths of time for decanting a beer is really something that people should be doing, and I don't think it's really valuable, because I think this can change massively depending on which beer it is. If it didn't have the diacetyl in it and it didn't have those apple notes in it, if they were different notes, the effect would be completely different. Like, maybe it would have just mellowed out as it got older, and that wouldn't be a good thing for every beer. Some beers, you want them to be quite pungent, right? I think experiment for yourself. Come up with your own opinions on this, but I wouldn't go straight to decanting if it's like, it's not a silver bullet for anything. It's going to change the beer, but it may be for the worse. I think that's the conclusion here. It's going to change the beer, but maybe not for the better. All right, thanks for watching. I hope it was fucking. I'd really love to hear what other people's experience is with decanting, because I know there's a lot of people out there that do this with beer. I know there's a lot of people that have been to Driefontein and had beers decanted for them. What's your experience with it? Did it improve a beer? Did it make the beer worse? I am genuinely interested to hear your experience on this, so let me know.